and welcome to another episode of The Great Debate. Thank you so much for all your great words and comments about our first few episodes, and we are now in Survivor Series season. So of course, we would have to do something related to Survivor Series. What is the best Survivor Series event ever? I'm here with Dan, who has made the trip, braved it here for his work. Hello.
Hello, Kenny.
It's lovely to see you and Vince here together with a great t-shirt. So, yeah, Survivor Series, we decided to do what is the greatest Survivor Series event ever, and we've got 32 to choose from. But before we talk about the bracket and the rules, people at home will be going, well, there's 33 Survivor Series events. One did not make the cut. Which one did not make the cut and why?
So, we did a prelim round off air, and we got rid of 2015.
And that may be controversial to some people because 2015 is not a bad show.
It's not a bad show.
Fine. Why? You explain your reasons first as to why.
I mean, it's just a bit naff, isn't it? It's at a time when, WWE wasn't brilliant creatively, and the show ends with Sheamus as champion after he's been jobbed out, squashed earlier in the show, and it just devalued the belt. And it was just a bit... It was, like I say, a bit naff, I thought.
For me, the big thing about it was, so Seth gets injured in Dublin earlier that month, and then we've got the tournament. So, a Survivor Series WWE title tournament. We've had one before.
Deadly Game 2.
Yeah, so the expectations were so high.
Yeah.
And it was just a very average tournament. If you go back and watch Deadly Game, which we will get into, there's twists, there's turns, there's surprises. The 2015 one didn't really have it.
It was just generic, wasn't it? It was just see some matches.
Paint by numbers.
Everyone knew who was winning. And then, the Sheamus thing was a swerve, but at the same time, it was Sheamus.
Yeah, exactly.
And in 2015, Sheamus wasn't the WWE champion.
He was.
Or he shouldn't have been. But I will say this, in its defence, mildly and briefly, it did work for about 2 weeks in getting Reigns over as a babyface.
It did. Very briefly.
Very briefly. So there was method to the madness, but it didn't make it any more enjoyable to watch back.
Now, so just to let you guys know how it's going to work, this week we're going to do the 32 Survivor Series in round 1, and then next week we're going to come back for round 2, the Sweet 16, the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, and the finals all in one show, where one will be crowned the winner as the greatest Survivor Series ever, or we will brawl on the floor until we come to some sort of consensus. So we've got these 32. Now, there are a couple of rules to this. Just so you guys know at home, we are going to talk through each pick. We're going to pick which one together we think, in unison should go through to the next round. But there is one veto that each of us have in rounds 1 and 2. So what that means is that if we talk about 2 Survivor Series and we can't agree, Dan can say, I'm using my veto and this one is going through and I can't question it. So we both get one of them in the first round and in the second round.
Which will inevitably lead to resentment in the later rounds when I put one of your shows out with a big veto, and then the one that went through in its place is
exactly
bullied in the further rounds by you, I'm sure.
So, I mean, have you got any sort of criteria in your mind for this? I mean, obviously we're just going to be talking about what ones we like and why we think one's better than the other, but is there anything people should bear in mind when you're arguing for a particular Survivor Series?
I think they all have... It varies. I don't think there's one definable quality that makes a good show, just like there isn't a good, one definable quality that makes a good match. There's various factors. Was there a big newsworthy moment? Is there a memorable angle? Is there maybe a great match, or just the general consistency of the show, or was it important? There's all different factors, I think. So it's very hard to break it down in just one or two reasons.
And it's funny, like Survivor Series, I think it was in 2009 was the idea they might scrap it.
Yeah.
And
crazy now.
We will see in the 2010s there's been a couple of brilliant Survivor Series, so the fact they kept it is really good. Okay, so we're going to go straight into the brackets, folks. So up first in Group 1 we've got 1989 taking on 1999, then we've got 1994 taking on last year's 2019, we've got 1990 taking on 2003, and then 2011 with the Return of the Rock against 2001 with the Alliance. Then we're going to move on to Group 2, which is another stats section. We've got 1995 taking on 1987, the inaugural Survivor Series. 2008 taking on 2012. 2005 taking on 2018. And we finish with 1996 taking on 2009. Group 3 continues the difficult decisions with 1988 taking on 98 with Deadly Game. 2017 taking on 1997 with Montreal. 2007 battles 2014, and we finished that group with 1991, the gravest challenge against 2016. And finally in Group 4, we will kick that off with 2002 taking on 2006. Then we've got 1992 battling 2004. We've got 2010 taking on 2013, and we finish off with 1993 taking on 2000 with the year of the Undertaker's terrible trousers. So we kick it off with 1989 taking on 1999. 1989, peak of the cartoon WWF era. We've got all the traditional Survivor Series tag matches up against Survivor 1, which I hate. Which Big Show wins the title. Austin is injured. They advertise Austin up to the show before somebody runs him down.
Knowing well in advance that he was not going to be on the show.
I think this one's fairly easy for us to pick who goes through, but what do you think?
I mean, 99 has that Big Show squash match earlier on in the show.
4-on-1.
4-on-1, which lasts a couple of minutes.
Because he battered the Blue Meanie and Kai En Tai on Heat, who were supposed to be his partners. Because he was so angry.
He's so angry.
That he wanted to face them alone.
So angry that he almost should have been the one responsible for running down Mr. Austin, you would think, logically. But, because obviously that was the big angle, was the hit and run on Stone Cold, which led to being Rikishi, and then it was Triple H, because, of course it was. But the show really suffered. And that was... Everyone loves the Attitude Era, and that's fine. And it's fun on TV. On pay-per-view in 99, it's terrible. And Survivor Series 99 is horrible. It's a bad show. And the women's match as well.
Deborah and Terry in there with May and Willa.
The problem with it, it's not so much who's in it. It's the fact it lasts under 2 minutes. I think it's 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, but it's single elimination.
Well, because the women that were in the match, they didn't have enough women to be able to carry a full.
Well, they didn't trust them to.
Yeah, I mean Deborah. Only women to ever win the women's title by losing an evening gown match.
Well, there you go, creative genius there. I could almost bust out the Vince puppet at this point.
It's funny because Survivor Series '89, I think, is a fun show, and I think it's probably the time that they most got right the traditional matches.
Yeah.
Because you've got like Dusty Rhodes' Dream Team against the Boss Man's Enforcers. You've got Warriors' team against the Heenan family. Hogan's team against Million Dollar Team, and it all just made sense. It is quite a forgettable show.
It's bland.
Because when we were putting these, so full disclosure, folks, these brackets are not worked. I literally sat in my house and put numbers between 1 and 32 and crumpled them up. I will put a photo on Twitter, actually. Or actually, do you know what? Our lovely Oliver will put a photo up right now that I sent them with all the little crumpled up bits of paper. So this is legit.
No expense spared, everybody.
Look,
no expense spared on the great debate.
We all have to start somewhere. We blew it on the intro.
And on the set.
And on the set. The set, everybody. Look at the set. But when I saw 1989, I had to think about what was on it. Because I remember that it was all the traditional matches, but I can't really remember a moment from it or like.
There's nothing special. The most notable thing, I think, is the fact that Warrior was the headliner, and that as far as I'm fairly certain about this, that it was the first pay-per-view WWF had done where Hogan wasn't involved in the main event in some way. I know there's WrestleMania 4, but he was very much involved in that.
Yeah.
So and that's quite that's significant, because obviously, a couple of months later, they went with Warrior as the top guy.
You can always see this as the beginning of that.
I would say it was. Yeah, I would say it was. It was kind of the test. It's quite a safe show to test him on as the top guy. I mean, it was an interesting show, with substitutions and stuff, which, we could talk about. Tully Blanchard's supposed to be on it, and he wasn't because of, various factors, which we don't need to go into in detail. But, like, it was still a very fun show. I thought a very fun time. I think '89 is a really great year.
For me, that's when I started loving WWF.
Yeah.
I will say shout out to Bertrand de Bear and Pat LaPrade, who did the Andre the Giant book that I read recently, and I interviewed them, and like they made a great case about Andre and how much he meant to the building of WWF through those big matches with Hogan and the series and stuff. But '89 is where all the music's in. Yeah. It's brighter. There's a lot more lights. So, I mean, I think we're pretty much in unison about 19.
Yeah,
through here.
Neither of them are great shows for sure, but 99's a bad show. And I think, was 99 the one that faced 2015 in the prelim round?
Yes, it was. Yeah. That was the other one that we put in there.
So it's done well.
It's done well. It got in the 32. So
it got in the 32, but...
And just as a kind of side note, Test should have been the one to win the title, because it made more storyline sense.
Test?
He was engaged to Stephanie.
Yeah, but he was rotten.
So was Big Show.
Big Show's not wrong.
How many good matches can you remember that the Big Show had in 1999?
12.
0.
Okay.
Test had 1, and it was with Shane McMahon.
Yeah. I mean, Come on, though, dude. Like, if Test had been the champion, you would have been complaining the same way you did when Jinder Mahal was champion or when Great Khali was champion.
No, but he shouldn't have won it for long. But he should have had it for a couple of weeks, put it on Triple H, because the Big Show thing, it was horrific.
Yeah, and it was.
And then it was attached to the Boss Man thing with all that.
Yeah.
Although
none of
I
it was good.
From I think it's 2020 Apparel. Shout out to them. I bought a pin, and it's a pin of the hearse with the Big Show on it, and then a little like chain.
Buy any old crap on the internet now, okay?
Well, look,
I know.
have a swatch.
Should we move on?
Yeah, so let's move on. So 1989 goes through. I think we both agree, more fun show.
Yep.
Up next, though, we have 1994 taking on 2019. So we get 1994. A lot of stuff happens on that show. We get 2019, first year that NXT gets involved in the Survivor Series stuff. A lot of stuff happens on that show.
I think it's a hard one, this. Obviously, a big gap between these ones. Very, very different company between the two shows. Obviously, 94, probably most memorable for Shawn and Diesel splitting, I would say.
Yep, Shawn Diesel splitting, Chuck Norris kicking Jeff Jarrett.
Yeah, I mean, I guess.
Chuck Norris. He was a big deal in 94.
Norris. Yeah, he was. But
Casket match with Undertaker and Yoko, that was a storyline the full year.
Yeah.
From Rumble.
And Brett losing the belt to Backlund.
To Backlund.
Now,
Helen Hart thrown in the towel.
That match is boring, I think. I think it's very boring.
I will die on this hill. The person who should have won, if it was only been a 3-day title reign, and that's all it was, the person that should have won that title was Owen Hart.
Yeah.
Not Bob Backlund.
But there's an article about this in issue 2.
There's also an upcoming
Inside the Ropes magazine, of course, which talks about these
InsideTheRopesMagazine.com. There's also going to be a double episode of The Great Debate coming up in the new generation, so we'll be able to tackle
we can go into that. But with Backlund, he did very well in reinventing himself from this really generic, bland babyface to this off-the-wall, crazy heel, and I thought he was quite good at it. And you want a transitional champion who it doesn't matter if they get destroyed, like he did by Diesel a couple of days later. And did you really want to squash Owen in the same way? I mean, I know you could have done it differently, but that's not what they wanted to do. They wanted that big title win at MSG and everything. So I don't hate the Backlund title win. I'm with you, Owen should have had the belt, but it's not really a factor anyway for Survivor Series, I don't think. I think the fact is that match is boring, but the Owen, causing Helen to throw in the towel, that's quite memorable.
Good storytelling.
It's good storytelling. It should have really led to Brett and Owen again at Mania 11.
And obviously it has Todd Pettingill on a horse, so who can argue, right?
Should we maybe talk about 2019?
And Vince McMahon got to live out his cowboy fantasy. Such good shit. So they've got 2019, which is the first year that Raw and SmackDown, who were doing their whole brands facing off against each other, included NXT.
It's a pretty good show. Like, it was... I think the concept, as I'm sure we'll talk about in 2017-18, had become a bit stale, and it needed that sort of injection. Because, how many times can you just watch random people in red or blue shirts fighting for no particular reason? Bringing NXT into it made it interesting. And it gave us, interesting matches like Pete Dunne and Adam Cole. That was, on Survivor Series, that was a real surprise to sort of see something like that. And, it was a really good show for the future of the company at that point, for Rhea Ripley,
Keith Lee.
And for Keith Lee. I mean,
it's also got one of my favourite sort of under 10-minute matches ever, Brock and Ray. Because
it's pretty good.
It's, when Dominic Mysterio comes in, they're doing that double 619, whatever part of you is Dominic shouldn't be getting in on Brock Lesnar, you just become a fan when that's happening, because it's just so fun. And then that near fall when Ray's doing the cover and Dominic's on top, and it's great. But I'll be controversial. I didn't really like the NXT addition to Survivor Series, mainly because it's triple threat matches, and it's all triple threats. And it's like the thing about Raw versus SmackDown that was really good was you got a kind of it's duh versus duh, rather than it being three ways. I like the idea of NXT being involved.
It should probably be an NXT versus WWE.
Yeah, exactly.
Because no one cares about Raw versus SmackDown.
Yeah,
nobody.
And like you say, you've done that three times. So, I mean, for me anyway, I would lean more towards 94 on this one, just because I think there's more moments that I can remember and stick out to me than 2019. But do you have a preference?
I mean, as a show, because, that's where my fandom's rooted, I prefer 94. I'd rewatch that again.
Mm-hmm.
Objectively, I think 2019 is probably a better card. I think it's got a couple of good matches on it.
Bad main event.
Average main event.
Bad.
Is it bad?
the expectations for Bayley and Becky and Shayna were so high.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just...
But was it a better main event than Undertaker and Yokozuna?
No.
Yes, it was.
As a WWE fan, a casket match. Chuck Norris battering Jeff Jarrett.
There's literally nobody watching this who agrees with that.
I was the one person that when ICW had Jeff Jarrett and he got replaced by Kushida, that I was like, aww. Everybody else saw that as a great thing.
Look, the problem we're going to have is we're always going to put... We might as well not bother, because we'll just put everything from the 80s and 90s.
No, that's because up next I'm going to put that theory to test. I think there's a lot of good Survivor Series in the 2000s and 2010s. I just think 2019, I like the idea of it. I don't think the execution of it was great. Maybe
not, but I think they should be applauded for at least trying to freshen up the concept.
Like, it's not Survivor 1, so...
It's not Survivor 1. I don't mind.
Okay.
I'm not going to argue strongly for 2019 because I don't love it or anything. I thought it was okay. It was good.
Yeah.
94, I think, is also okay. There's nothing particularly great on it. There's a couple of boring things on it.
I think it's got more memorable moments on it, which is why I would give it the nod.
More memorable than Rhea and Keith Lee and the Ray and Brockler?
Yeah, the beginning of Diesel and Shawn breaking up.
All right. Fine.
So
fine.
That was an angry scratch of the pen there. On the
it
paper.
Was.
So 1994 goes through. Up next in the brackets, we've got 1990 taking on 2003. Birth of the Undertaker and the Gobbledygooker against Team Austin, Team Bischoff, Team Angle, Team Lesnar, Buried Alive, Ambulance match, etc. Now, you have a very strong opinion about this one.
So I'm going to go the opposite way.
But speaking of which, you just said...
Here we go.
Use
my own words against me.
The point of this is we're not supposed to just use our favourite era and pick that. We're supposed to be objective.
We're not supposed to. But then it is our show. So.
It is our show, so we get to make the rules.
We do.
Is this where maybe a veto is going to come in?
2003, I think, is when WWE... And it is the year for me where WWE really fell off a cliff. 2002 wasn't great. 2001's got problems. But there's still a lot of entertaining stuff there. A lot of big stars there. By 2003, Austin's gone. Rock's pretty much gone. Where's your big headline? They're trying lots of stuff that doesn't really work. They are trying to bring through sort of the next generation, but it's people like Nathan Jones.
No, but I mean Orton. He's got a big place in this show.
Great. Shut that one down. Matt Morgan, Rick Martel.
Rick Martel
he's ruining things.
Falling apart.
Someone will be fired. Fire the set producer. I don't like 2003 at all.
Right, okay.
Ambulance match, you're going to argue that that's a good thing. I don't know how you can. There's the Undertaker Vince thing. And the positive is it gets rid of the rotten American badass that everyone somehow misremembers as being good.
It was good at points.
It wasn't.
At points
when?
It was good.
It was good at Judgment Day 2000.
When he was a heel. The Ric Flair match at WrestleMania 18, the build
Big
to
Nasty Red or whatever he was.
I thought the heel run at the beginning was really good. But...
It's not Undertaker, man.
He needed to change, though. If he hadn't changed, he would have... Because it was stale. And that conversation probably is for another time.
We'll do a whole show on that.
But it's ironic that the two choices that we've got here, 1990 versus 2003, are the debut of Taker and the sort of demise of the American Badass.
90 is really interesting. Because you do have Taker's debut.
Stuff.
Speaking of trying stuff, exactly. So you've got Taker's debut, which is obviously memorable. And look... It probably is overhyped. He doesn't do much. He batters a few people. Throws Dusty out the ring.
Tombstone's Coco Beware.
Tombstone's brilliant, big win. It's not like it's great, but it is memorable, and it certainly, in retrospect, is memorable. But then you've got things like the main concept of the show was all the Survivor Series matches for the first time ever meant something. Kind of like when they changed the Rumble in '93, where if you won it, you got the WrestleMania title shot. This was, if you win your Survivor Series match, all the survivors go through to the final, to the big grand final, where it was baby faces against heels. They didn't really explain why people were on certain teams, but
Yeah. What was it for? It wasn't like it was for...
Prestige. What's any of it for? What's any wrestling match for?
Titles and...
Okay, what about every wrestling match that doesn't have a title involved? What are anything for?
But, I mean, if you're going... Because the ultimate team then was Hogan, Warrior...
Tito.
And Tito.
Yeah. Which was interesting.
It was interesting, but I don't know. I don't think the concept worked. They didn't bring it back.
I thought they should have brought it back, and I thought it would have worked really well in building people. Like, can you imagine if you've got, a baby fit like Keith Lee, if they'd done this in 2019, Keith Lee had gone through and he was like, this guy from NXT, and he was the only NXT person who'd gone through against 6 or 7 others, and he'd somehow made it through in one. You've made a superstar in one night. As a concept, it can, in theory, work. I agree they didn't execute it well, and I don't want to hear about the gobbledygooker. But the show was quite a fun show. It was like the last appearance for a few people, like Axe, I think was the last time he appeared.
It was a fun show.
It's WWF at its big, brash, bold, silliest. You've got Warrior, Legion of Doom, and Texas Tornado on a team. I mean, look at that. That is what you remember. It's all your Hasbro figures. It's the Hasbro figure show. Like, how could you ever pick bland, generic 2003 with its bar and ambulance match and it's not particularly great?
I think 2003 had a lot of good stuff on it. I think the Buried Alive match was a good idea because it then gave birth to the Kane Undertaker match the following WrestleMania where Undertaker back as the dead man. Goldberg beating Triple H. While not match of the year candidate, it was Goldberg beating Triple H. It was Triple H taking a loss.
Done a month later though.
But we're not talking about
it. Was already too little, too late by that point. You should have won at SummerSlam. So
I liked that he won. I thought the Team Angle and Team Lesnar match was really good. I thought that there was a lot of people in the undercard like Eddie Guerrero and Randy Orton and different stuff who were all elevating. There was the Austin Bischoff match, which was sensational, with Shawn Michaels being the final guy who's trying to fight for Steve Austin's career.
That match is good.
And then Austin comes out and cuts this emotional speech about how he got his start in Dallas and now he's gone and Bischoff's beat him, and it's like, I think the reason that 2003 maybe I argue for that one a little bit more is because I don't think anything in 1990 quite has the emotion of that thing in Austin Bischoff. But I'm not going to die on the hill, so if you are so passionate about 1990,
I love 90.
Then we'll put it through.
Amazing. I was going to waste my veto on that.
Up next on the bracket, we've got 2011 versus 2001. We've got Rock and Cena tagging in Madison Square Garden with the return of Howard Finkel and CM Punk taking on Alberto Del Rio against Team WWF versus Team Alliance.
It's hard, this one.
I think there's a clear winner here for me.
I mean, The Rock's return was big. Weird, though.
Weird.
Like,
I was watching a lot of Survivor Series stuff to prep for this, and I was watching this random backstage vignette in 2009, and it was MVP, R-Truth, Kofi Kingston, and Mark Henry with Christian, and
we were just watching Raw from this year,
and they're doing this comedy segment about Christian going, "Oh, I'm the only," and the joke's that he's the only white guy, but he says, "I'm the only Canadian, right. I'm the only whatever," and I turned to my other half and I said, can you imagine if somebody in 2009 at Survivor Series had said, by the way, see you in 2 years, R-Truth will be headlining Survivor Series against The Rock and the Garden? You'd go, what? But that's what happened.
And mate, if you say it now, in 2020, hey, do you know that R-Truth headlined Survivor Series against The Rock 10 years ago? People would probably be shocked.
I really liked Awesome Truth. I'm going to just put it out there. I
liked R-Truth in that era. Yeah. I thought he ran with something. Look, you can say that for anything. Can you imagine Hunter Hearst Helmsley, that guy in the hog pen match, running modern wrestling and being a multi-time world champion? It's fair enough. People do evolve.
Yeah.
And Truth at that point probably did deserve to headline, but that wasn't the weird part. It was the fact that Rock. Why didn't they wait for Mania? It's like it seemed very rushed. And kind of a little bit of a waste. And I get why they did it, and it was part of a build. It was MSG and everything, but it's a bit...
But I mean, it
doesn't make a lot of sense.
You look at the rest of that show, something that I find quite difficult is the embarrassment of Howard Finkel that they do in that show on commentary. It's horrible. It's bad.
Was that the era when Cole was burying all the legends he did with Piper and Wendy Richter and things like that? And I hated that era. I hated that stuff.
So... why I think 2001 wins this for me quite handily is that the invasion is bad for people like us who were dreamed of WWF versus WCW. I think if you actually go back and watch it, it's not that bad. It's actually pretty decent and quite fun
in hindsight
if you don't have the expectations. But that show is great. Like, you've got all these unification matches, Edge and Test, Hardys and Dudleys.
God, Test again. Like this obsession with Test.
It comes back and wins the Battle Royal. What was the Immunity Battle Royal?
Immunity Battle Royal, yeah.
Trish wins the six-pack challenge to bring the women's title back, but it's all about Team Alliance versus Team WWF in the main event.
Yeah, the rest of it doesn't even matter.
It is
you knew who
one
was
of the best matches ever.
You knew who was winning, didn't you? You knew it was WWF winning, of course you did.
Yeah.
But the story, the spiraling story they take you on in that match to get
Heyman on commentary with JR.
It's great. It is great. I can't disagree. Like, look, 2001's the clear winner. We can argue its negatives down the line, I'm sure, but I think it's got to go through.
Yeah, 2001 makes it through. Up next we have, and this is one that's probably going to cause a lot of problems for you. It's 1995 versus 1987, the first Survivor Series ever. The Thanksgiving Eve tradition up against one of the wackiest and weirdest Survivor Series
Bill Watts
shows
Survivor
ever.
Series.
So I stopped watching WWF in 1995, so I didn't see Survivor Series 95 in real time. I went back and watched it like a year later and could not quite comprehend a lot of the stuff that was going on it. But it's a really fun show. I think 95 is probably a clearer winner over 1987, but you have more of a complex.
I think it's
thought.
close. I think it's very close. Look, when I saw the draw, this one devastated me, because when you have when they do the Champions League draw and you're like, oh no, it's Real Madrid and Man United or something. It's like that's the tie. And this one was one that sort of stood out to me as 95's. So Bill Watts was involved in putting it together, and I think he was gone by he was gone by the time Survivor Series happened. But he came up with the wild card concept, of having heels and faces mixed. And the build-up was really good. And, there's some other stuff on there as well. Bret and Diesel in the main event. It's the first time WWF sort of went down the Attitude Era route. They were experimenting, dabbling a little bit. Whereas 87 it's just glorious WWF bigness. I know you don't love 87 because it's not quite as polished as it gets in the later years.
There is good stuff on it.
There is good stuff.
You get to see the Jumping Bomb Angels,
who were amazing,
who were superb.
And anyone who ever says, women's wrestling started in WWF here, and before that it was all just, they were just used for bra and panties matches. No, go back and watch the Jumping Bomb Angels. They're better than anybody on the roster in terms of purely from an in-ring point of view. We've the Japanese influence we've got now in WWE is Asuka and Io Shirai, and you can see that the Jumping Bomb Angels, they kind of kicked off. They were as good as they are.
Yeah, 100%.
They were as good as they are. One of my favourite matches ever is the Jumping Bomb Angels against the Glamour Girls from an MSG house show. It's on one of the VHS tapes, and it's incredible.
The Glamour Girls. I mean,
hey man, they could go though.
They could. I mean, it's just one of my favourite things about the 80s is they would have a lot of wrestlers, male and female, who'd be like the beautiful, the glamour, and. That's not the word that you would ever think that you would describe as those people, but that's what makes it so fun.
It is, and that's the thing with 87. It is fun, and you've also got another one of my favourite matches is the 20-man tag match. So it's 10 tag teams across 2 teams, and it highlights how great that tag team division was at the time. It's really just nearly all great teams, and then the main event's really good. Hogan gets beat.
He does. It's very rare.
Very rare, but obviously that was leading to eventually we get to the main event one, and then we get to WrestleMania.
And this is the first WWF major show where Hogan gets beat.
Yeah. So it's important. There are important things. I love both of these shows, so I cannot pick. I'm just gonna have to go with you, whatever you say.
I do like 87. It's a bit before my era of WWF, but I do like the way I like Bam Bam getting a shine with Andre. That was pretty good. There was good stuff on it. I think I need to edge with 95 because the wild card stuff.
Did you like how
so
Bam Bam was shining on 95
with the big gold dust? But no, 95 when you get that Bret and Diesel match, which is incredible.
Yeah,
because
it's
people don't think about Bret and Diesel in 95 were doing Attitude Era stuff way before the Attitude Era. That spot through the table, which of course everybody knows, and Bret Hart beat Diesel with a roll up, and nobody felt cheated by that. Nobody felt
the way they did it was
because they
really
did it so
smart,
well. Yeah. It was really, really smart.
And they let Diesel swear on camera after he lost, which was intentional.
Selling how important and that was to show. So you had Ahmed Johnson slamming Yokozuna.
Oh, amazing, Ahmed.
You had
love Ahmed.
I'll argue to the day I die that he was actually good.
Ahmed is one of my favourites.
And
pleasure.
Yeah, actually, I'll quick call it to Tom Fordy in Inside the Ropes magazine in the Road Warrior Animal piece saying that Ahmed Johnson was bad.
I know, we nearly fired him in his first week. Hey.
But we give second chances.
Everyone gets opinions.
But and then you've got that eight women match with Aja Kong involved, and that was great.
Asari, she was incredible in that match.
Unreal.
What a waste, of all those talents, because they canned the division a couple of weeks later.
But yeah, I think 95's got to go through just based on...
I'm not happy to lose 87, especially so early, but I can't disagree that 95 deserves it.
Now, we go from that to one where the next bracket we've got is 2008 taking on 2012. I actually don't really have a strong opinion on either of these shows. I don't think either of the shows are particularly good. You look at 2008, you've got Cena taking on Jericho, and Jericho has just come off that really hot program with Shawn, which was great. You've got Taker and Big Show in a casket, which is fun. You know, it's Taker versus a big guy in a casket. It's been done before.
Yeah, we've seen it a million times.
Then you've got one of the strangest WWE title matches of all time with Triple H, Edge, and Vladimir Kozlov in a triple threat match.
By strangest, you mean?
Just so odd.
It's just...
And then that takes on 2012, which had Punk, Cena, Ryback in a triple threat main event, but did have the debut of The Shield right at the end of it.
I think the only... See, this is where I'm like, I wish one of these was against 95, the other was against 87.
Yeah.
Because neither of us have a particular affinity for... I don't think anyone has a particular affinity for these two shows. They're just kind of there. You know, they exist, they're fine, they're not offensive, but they're just nothing particularly exciting. But 2012 does have the advantage, I think. The Shield debut is memorable. Mm-hmm. And I think for that alone, it deserves to go through. I mean, can you find anything on 2008? You know, like, you can consult our notes here.
I mean, in 2012,
I don't think there's anything that warrants it.
In 2012, you do have Team Foley against Team Ziggler, which is pretty fun. Sheamus and Big Show had a pretty decent feud for the world title. Nothing hugely memorable, but it was okay. No. But yeah, the 2008 one is just... There's a lot of people in it. You know, they've got the traditional Survivor Series matches, but I can't remember anything from those three traditional Survivor Series
they
matches.
Don't stand out. And 2008 was a very strange kind of time as well. It was very much the previous generation had moved on, but there was still a couple of them hanging around, you know. And they were mixing them up with like the new guys coming through, but they hadn't quite found that balance properly yet, and they were trying a lot that wasn't really sort of resonating, I think, and it's not a memorable show. And 2012, like I say, the only really redeeming factor for me is the Shield debut, which is a memorable moment. You know, you remember that, that's when that happened. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of the criteria we've got to base this round on.
Yeah, just a very low bar for those shows.
Very low bar.
Shield's debut, I'm going to go with that. So 2012 does advance. Up next, we've got 2005 taking on 2018. This one's pretty interesting because 2005, there is some decent stuff on it. You've got the Team Raw versus Team SmackDown, where they actually had some pretty fun stuff building up to it, where Eric Bischoff had turned the lights out on all the SmackDown wrestlers at the Homecoming show, and then there was like an invasion of Taboo Tuesday. So they actually did make it a kind of heated rivalry between Raw and SmackDown. You had
they tried.
You had interesting people facing off against each other. You had Triple H and Ric Flair in a last man standing match. Oh dear God.
Hey, that was all right.
But it was better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Cena and Angle was really good. Booker Benoit was good. You know, they were doing the best of 7, kind of repeating the WCW stuff. Yeah. But then 2018 is also a pretty fun show. You've got Rollins and Nakamura taking on each other. Ronda and Charlotte had a killer match on that show.
And
Bryan and
Brock is great. But here's the thing. That show was very much, you know, people didn't enjoy it at the time until those last two matches. Rollins and Nakamura is not good, and it's okay. It's nothing special.
It's more the kind of the novelty of seeing them in a match together.
The idea of it is great, and if they were wrestling a proper match with, you know, something other than you're the champion, so you're facing each other. If there was an actual story to it, maybe, and if they weren't forced to wear stupid t-shirts, and I guess this is where we go into this, like the t-shirt thing, the wearing the Raw SmackDown t-shirt thing ruins Survivor Series for me, modern Survivor Series, because it's just nobody has brand affinity. You don't want that. You don't want everyone to just be generic. And like one of the best things about wrestling is seeing these, you know, different characters, their different attires, how they look, what it looks like when they're in the ring with each other.
Yeah.
And to just have them in, you know, naff t-shirts, look like indie wrestlers, you know.
I think it's okay to have them in the t-shirts if there is there's a story. As like Raw and SmackDown have a heated rivalry, which there's one that we'll get to. I think they did a good job of that, but in this show they didn't. In this show, now we do also have the interesting story arc of Becky Lynch getting punched in the face, so she's not on the show. Yep. We get robbed of the Ronda and Becky match in 2018, but we then obviously that gets us the main event at WrestleMania the next year with Charlotte. Do you have like a big preference over one or the other between 2005 and 2018?
I think the two main events in 2018 are so good.
That they carry it.
That they carry it. And, it's such an important show for WWE in WWE law now because of the Becky... Because of something that doesn't even happen on it, but the Becky Nia thing was obviously in the lead up to it, and it changed everything. And if not for that, Becky probably wouldn't have been in the main event of WrestleMania.
No.
They would have probably gone with the Charlotte and Ronda. I mean, it might have ended up going like Daniel Bryan and the crowd would have demanded it, but, we don't know that for certain. So I think that alone, plus the two great matches, probably is enough.
Yeah, I think 2018, just based off the Ronda Charlotte thing and Bryan and Brock, that wins it for me. Yeah. So we're agreeing on a lot of stuff. This is
I don't like it. We haven't vetoed at all.
I've got my veto ready to go. I know where I'm using it.
Do you now?
Yeah, I know where I'm using it right now. It's
Where are you using it?
I'm not going to tell you
What
that.
happens if I use a veto after you've used a veto?
It's the first person to call their veto.
Or maybe they just both go out unless we can decide.
No, I think the fairest
like
way...
Like Andre Hogan.
Don't do the double DQ from WrestleMania 4. So yeah, if you call veto in one, I can't then use my veto for that pick. Let's make it interesting.
Do they carry over at the next round if we don't use them?
No.
So we do need to use them.
Yeah.
Exert our dominance.
You need to become the alpha male, and it's such a difficult thing for you to do.
But fair.
Up next, we've got 1996 taking on 2009. I feel like this is one of the easiest.
It's 96.
Of course.
Okay.
Psycho Sid attacks an elderly man with a camera.
Sid's best match.
Sid's best match ever.
Sid's best match.
Bret and Austin, I love that match. I almost prefer it to WrestleMania 13.
I think it holds up better because WrestleMania 13, don't get me wrong, it's a legendary match. But a lot of the stuff they do that was, you hadn't seen before at that point has been done a million times since.
Yeah.
So with fresh eyes, I can understand why it wouldn't have the same impact. But that Survivor Series match is just a wrestling match, and it's perfectly crafted. There's some genius to it. Bret goads him into doing the sleeper, into doing the $1 Million Dream, because he knows he can get out of that. And Austin doesn't realise that Bret knows how to get out of that. It's so intricate and clever. And even though on the commentary, Vince is already like calling him old, because he's clearly got buyer's remorse, it's a JR as well. It's still, as a show, top to bottom. That for me is the show when WWF started to turn around, in the Monday Night War and in general. I know it was a good year and a bit before the ratings changed, but the attitude was really established there, I think. So
yeah,
I think it's absolutely... I mean, you can talk about 2009 a bit because we probably should give it lip service, but
2009,
there's not much to it.
They did a couple of things in that show to try and give it like a big sell. So you had Cena defending the WWF title against both members of DX with Shawn Triple H, which actually one of my favourite openings to a match, where the bell rings and doesn't Shawn just super kick Triple H straight away, like at the beginning of that match. Like that's a great way to kind of set like Shawn Michaels is here to win the title. That's what he's there to do, and that was good. Undertaker.
That is a good match. Yeah.
Undertaker, the odds were stacked against him against Jericho and Big Show in a triple threat. They were also a tag team.
2 triple threats again, though. I mean, it's like the argument used in 2019. That's not what you want from Survivor Series.
Yeah,
like,
the Cena one worked better.
It did. I mean, you could argue the 2019 ones worked better, but there you go. I think we don't... Look, there's nothing wrong with 2009. It's actually quite a strong show, to be honest. And, again, this on the bracket is quite a difficult one.
Drew, Miz and Sheamus getting the win in their elimination match, which was a real sign of, like, we're pushing new people.
I mean, and I guess with Sheamus and The Miz, they did push him, and Drew obviously was a good 10 years later. But, yeah, I think 2009, again, if it was in a different match, it'd probably go through, and maybe beyond that. But it's 96 is... I think 96 is going to be right up there towards the end. There's no way it goes through ahead of 96 anyway.
No, not a chance. Up next, another difficult one actually. Another pretty difficult one. It is 1988 taking on 1990.
Veto!
You're not. Please tell me you're not putting Deadly Game out at this stage.
Kenny.
You're eliminating Deadly Game.
I know, right? I don't trust you one bit.
It's Russo's finest hour.
Oh,
1988.
Russo's finest hour.
Outlaw Ron Bass. Dino
what kind
Bravo.
of criteria is that? Russo's finest hour. That's because everything else
Deadly
he did
Game
rotten.
was phenomenal. You had The Rock's heel turn to become the corporate champion. You had Shane as the referee when he flips off Austin, which nobody saw coming. The whole night, I mean, apart from X-Pac and Steven Regal, which was one of the worst matches I've ever seen in my life.
They were all terrible.
It was
matches.
a great tournament. It was peak if somebody was to say, right, why do you love Attitude Era WWF? I would say, watch Deadly Game.
Okay.
But you fucked it. So
listen, let me just explain my reasoning.
we're looking for a co-host for the great debate. Preferably if you
You'll
live near
get a nice little
Glasgow.
announcement on Twitter as well when you get. Listen, I appreciate '98 as a work of storytelling art.
I can't believe you vetoed.
I know.
I wasn't going to use my veto there anyway,
I
but
thought you were. I got frightened. Look, it's a good.
I'm so glad now because now I get to use the veto I wanted to use.
I know. I think I've blown it. But look, it was a strong storyline show. But the wrestling is terrible. And
But
if
do you know
you
what-
watch it back
do you know what
now,
my-
it is not good.
Do you know my least favourite thing about wrestling?
Vince Russo.
No.
Okay.
Wrestling.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you.
The best thing about
88's
wrestling
not
is-
through because of wrestling, though, is it?
Okay, so in case for people who... Because there's probably a lot of people who are not old enough to have watched 1988.
And are probably writing the little hate mails right now. Like,
Why is it why does it go through? Why did you use your veto for it?
the tag team match, the
10 team.
again, the 10 team, which
is better than the 87 one, yeah.
87. Just everything about it for me is what I like about wrestling. Every character on that show is over. Every character on that show is bigger, larger than life. Colourful.
The Mega Powers Twin Towers thing is amazing.
It's so good, and like it all leads to that amazing, because that Hogan Savage Warrior Andre story arc, that spreads from really WrestleMania 3, maybe WrestleMania 2, right through to WrestleMania 7, and it all interconnects. You've got Bundy and others involved, Slaughter and everything. It does all tie together, and this is another chapter in it, and I just think it's a great show. If I say, right, I'm going to watch Survivor Series, it's always 88 or 90, which managed to make it through. I was just checking.
I'm going to slaughter 90 in the second
I
round.
know this, but
No.
So look, it is a personal preference thing. I do appreciate 98. I do.
They're both good shows. It's not like either of those shows are bad. One has been cruelly put out too soon, but that's fine. You will experience
like
that.
87. I couldn't have 87 and 88.
Yeah,
I just
that's
couldn't.
true.
I
I
couldn't.
mean, prepare for what I'm going to do to you soon. But anyway, up next we have
You've said that before.
2000 rude. 2017 up next, taking on 1997.
20-year gap, man.
20-year gap. Now, 97 to me is one of the most interesting Survivor Series that's going to be in this tournament, because how are we categorising it? It's the biggest moment in modern day pro wrestling ever.
Most talked about anyway.
Yeah, but it's like everything comes back to that. It's part of so much stuff.
Yeah.
And then 2017 is kind of, all modern stuff. You've got a really... there's much better kind of wrestling on 2017.
100%.
And it's a lot more kind of... It's less chaotic. But, yeah.
A bit of chaos isn't necessarily a bad thing, unless
I
you're
love the
watching
chaos, but-
Nitro, in 2000.
Yeah, this one's interesting. I'm curious to see where your head's at between 97 and 2017.
Ah, man, look, it's a hard one for me, because I always prefer, personally, because again, you like the wrestling you grew up with the most. And when Survivor Series 97, I'm going to show my age, 13. And, still really loved watching wrestling then. And I enjoyed that show at the time. But having watched it back, a few times, it is a terrible show. It is. Every match on that show is bad. Every match. You've got Owen and Austin, which is a couple of minutes, because it's under 5 minutes, because Austin's still got a broken neck. He can't do anything, and he wouldn't work with Owen. You've got the Team Canada, Team USA thing's okay, I guess, but you've got Goldust kind of not getting involved and messing around, and then you've got the Truth Commission. Look, I loved the Interrogator. At that point, I was like, this guy is going to win the title, because he was just, they made him look like an absolute killer. He destroyed everybody.
He didn't do anything.
He destroyed everybody. He came in the ring, destroyed them, carried on. And it was like, they've built this guy into this. He was like the next Giant Gonzalez kind of monster.
You're talking about one of Sandra's favourite wrestlers, Kurgan.
I love the Interrogator. He's on my guilty pleasure list, with Giant Gonzalez, as I mentioned. But none of it matters. None of the wrestling matters on that show, because it is all terrible. What matters is that main event, and it is the biggest moment, and probably the most important moment. Maybe is it bigger than the first WrestleMania? Is it bigger than WrestleMania 3? And the reason I say that is because it all led to Mr. McMahon, which led to Austin McMahon, which led to them making the most money they'd ever made. So
Now,
you could argue that.
If people were watching this and they're going, 1997, don't know a lot about it, how can they find out more?
I'm not doing
Give the show down the camera.
I'm not doing the shameless plugs for the excellent books that you can buy, such as Titan Screwed, which will cover the Montreal Screwjob in
I wasn't
detail.
meaning that one.
I know what you were meaning.
Dave Meltzer, Wrestling Observer Book, the yearbook 1997.
Dave's first. Sorry, Dave.
WrestlingObserverBook.com.
Yeah, you can.
Is where you can pick that up. Pick up Inside the Ropes magazine as well. Why not?
I'll go to Amazon.
Amazon.
And buy.
Everyone loves Amazon. Everyone's corporate greed.
And Wrestling Observer.
Anyway,
greed. So 2017.
You've always got to sell it at some point. It's just pick your poison as to where you sell it.
So 2017 has good matches.
Shield and New Day, good 6-man tag.
All right, 6-man tag. Talk to me about the Roman attire.
So you've got Roman Reigns, who's still in his own gear, his vest and his trousers, but then Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins, who are in the Shield, they have to wear not the Raw shirt, which I find less offensive than this, the half Raw, half Shield shirt.
Yeah.
Like, who in their mind went, do you know what's cool? Let's take half of their own shirt and half of the Raw shirt and just put it together.
It's like people go to football matches with a scarf with both teams.
Oh, God.
And everybody hates those people, right? So, can you imagine going to the Old Firm Derby and someone having a scarf with Celtic and Rangers?
I'd cut it in half.
So they'd be cut in half, wouldn't they? Like, it's ridiculous.
I didn't think that 2017 Survivor Series would bring us to a Rangers Celtic Old Firm debate.
You never know where we're going to go on the great debate, So. But the problem with that show, because there are good matches, Brock and AJ is good, but the main event is...
It was going to be Brock and Jinder. And then AJ won the title in Manchester.
Pray for small mercies.
Go for the gift one.
But tell me about that main event.
Yeah, the main event's a great idea because if you look at it here, you've got Team Raw, which is Braun Strowman, Finn Balor, Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe, and Triple H, taking on a great team against Team SmackDown, also a great team, Bobby Roode, John Cena, Randy Orton, Shane McMahon, and Shinsuke Nakamura. Now, I actually do like Shane McMahon in these matches. I think the fact that he was the GM of SmackDown and he wanted to be in the matches and sort of fighting for SmackDown, I thought was always a good thing. I just thought that they a lot of times misused.
He was much better in that other one, the one where he got concussed, the Reigns spear.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that was the year later or
2016.
The year before, yeah.
But the thing,
he was better then.
The thing that needed to happen here was you had Braun Strowman, who was on the rise.
Yeah.
He needed something. You had Balor and Joe, who needed some stuff. You had Bobby Roode and Nakamura, who needed stuff. And a
lot of them did, yeah.
And it wasn't like they all got buried or anything like that.
Well, they did.
But they all lost, and they weren't the focal points of the match.
Quite quickly and as well. It was just... And who were you left with?
And at the end of it, it comes down to Braun Strowman and Triple H against Shane McMahon. It becomes Triple H beats Shane after pretending that he's with him.
Yeah.
And then you get Braun and Triple H facing off. Now, I actually don't have a problem with how they ended this, but it needed to go to the next pay-per-view, Braun versus Triple H. Braun gets to beat him. And they didn't do it.
Of course they didn't.
So what ended up happening here was you hurt the people that needed to be helped, and then the whole thing that you did it for, to have that Braun Triple H moment, you didn't capitalise on.
I think Survivor Series 2017, and 2017 in general, is kind of the year when it really starts going the wrong way.
After WrestleMania.
Creatively. Yeah, after WrestleMania. Creatively, it kind of started to become a bit slapdash and a lot of stuff not making sense and no logical follow-up to things. It's very difficult to argue for that ahead of 97, purely, even though it is a better show as a wrestling show. But as we've said, wrestling's the least important thing sometimes on wrestling shows, and I don't think you can not put through the show that has the Montreal Screwjob and ultimately saves WF from going out of existence.
Yeah, I agree. I think 1997 has to go through.
I'm worried that you haven't used your veto yet.
Up next, we have 2007 versus 2014.
You're going to put 92 out, aren't you? Okay, 2007.
I think this was a pretty easy one for me. Purely based on... I think 2007's got some good stuff on it. I like the Hell in a Cell match with Batista and Undertaker. I think Orton and Michaels is pretty decent. I did pop, because I rewatched this today actually, the Great Khali versus Hornswoggle as Vince's son, where they did like a tale of the tape. And they had...
at least it was wacky and silly.
And then they had Shaquille O'Neal in the front row and everyone's shouting, "We want Shaq," and Vince gets on the mic and goes, "I don't care what you people want." Great.
You needed this.
I needed the gimmick. Yeah. But for me, I think one of the best Survivor Series matches ever is Team Cena and Team Authority in 2014. And, they kick off that show. That show's so big that Vince comes out at the beginning and sort of tells Cena and the Authority, they're like, this is real. Whichever one of you guys lose, you're gone. That's the rule. And then we have the match. The match is brilliant. It's got all the classic big moments that you want in a big 5-on-5 match. It's one of my favourite Big Show turns that he ever did, because he punched John Cena in the face. Who doesn't love that?
Who doesn't love a Big Show turn?
And then we get the debut of Sting and the meltdown of the Authority. So for me, that's like a clear...
It's well booked as well. Because once everyone's gone and it's Ziggler left, you're like, oh my God, the Authority's going to win again. Yeah. When are we ever going to get rid of this damn team? And that was clever, because it's fine to take you on the ride of misery if you then get the big ending, which you did with Sting. It's very different to what sometimes they can do now, where they take you on the big misery and then it's just misery.
And it's so big that I remember, like, sometimes you remember video packages, and I always remember that I do like some shit music. Like, they used a Nickelback song, Edge of Revolution, and I remember that song based on that video package because I remember the story of it. And that's when wrestling's got you, when you remember stuff like that.
Like everyone remembers My Way for Wrestling 78.
Or you remember Placebo Run Up the Hill for Taker Sean 2. Or whatever. Like, you remember when they've got these packages. So, by the way, I think we're in agreement. 2014 goes through.
We are, but I think we're being slightly unfair to 2007 here, because Orton Michaels is a good match. Batista Taker is really good.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And even
Return of Edge at the end.
Yeah, and the handicap match is good as well, like the 5-on-4. So it is a good show, but in good faith, we can't put any show through that's got Great Khali vs Hornswoggle on it. So I think 2014 it is.
True. Well, up next on the brackets, we've got 1991 versus 2016. Vito! Take your gravest challenge and shove it. And I'll tell you why. So
a man who loves 89
I do, but
and you've tried to put them all out.
One of my favourite creative eras of WWE is July 2016 to April 2017, when they split those brands, and it's about the brands matter. You've got on SmackDown not a great women's division, but it's a building women's division, and it's all about that. And it came to this Survivor Series. The team matches were phenomenal. That the men's match with Team SmackDown, AJ Styles, Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton, Dean Ambrose and Shane McMahon with Ellsworth as the mascot, against Team Raw, Braun Strowman, Chris Jericho, Kevin Owens, Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins, Goldberg, Brock Lesnar. They made up for the wrong of WrestleMania 20.
Oh, did they ever? And that was bold, the way they booked that. Because obviously it was the squash. And
the squash.
That, which was amazing. And because, there was that resentment from some people. Goldberg and old people in the main event. And, it was so bad last time. Why would you do it again? And they answered,
And, 91 is a good show. You've got Hogan and Taker, which we obviously love. I mean, I would be remiss if somebody's watching it and doesn't have our rose-tinted glasses. It is one of the worst finishes in terms of Undertaker does a tombstone, Ric Flair puts a chair in. There is like a 3-foot gap between.
He protected him.
He did. Is
that the one where Hogan claims he injured his neck?
Yes.
You didn't injure your neck, Terry.
I don't think Terry exists anymore.
Yes, that's true. I told Hogan to injure his neck, not Terry. Right?
But because they did the angle with Savage and Jake, so Savage and Jake had taken out of their match. Instead, we got a 6-man tag,
which ruins it. To be fair, I mean, I know why they did it. They wanted to save it for Tuesday in Texas a couple of days later. But this was a very weird show. Like, it's just there's some odd stuff on it. I mean, everything's kind of crammed into the Flair Survivors match, which is the only good thing on the card, really. Yeah,
I mean, you've even got the one in the match, the one with El Matador, Jim Duggan, Slaughter, and Texas Tornado. There's not really a great babyface in that match. Tornadoes,
not by 91. There's not. Yeah, no. Sure. All of them were great babyfaces at one point.
At one point, but not then. Even combined at that point.
No, there's not much going on.
But yes, 2016. I feel so strongly about that show that I
probably would have agreed with you, by the way.
Oh well. There's not anything else on here that I'm going to fight for that badly. I don't think that we're going to disagree. 2016 goes through.
Yep.
Up next, though, we have 2002 versus 2006. Madison Square Garden, 2002, the first ever Elimination Chamber. The debut of Scott Steiner in one of the greatest segments of all time.
Give me the good mic.
Against 2006, where we have Batista and King Booker. We got a first blood match with Kennedy and The Undertaker.
Yeah.
Team Cena, Team Big Show. Team DX against Team Rated RKO. They're both pretty good shows. I think there's one that's kind of clearly better than the other, but tell me why 2002 is better.
It's better. So, consistently as a show, it's better from top to bottom. There's plenty on it, that's different as well. So, like the main event's the first ever Elimination Chamber match.
Yeah.
And it is long. Too long, probably. And, there's a couple of things that go around, like Triple H breaking his throat, thanks to Mr. Van Damme and everything. And Shawn in those horrific tights, the dirty brown.
But Shawn
tights.
winning the title, that was a great moment.
But Shawn won the title in the Garden, and it was like
with the weird
6 years on from losing the title in the Garden as a babyface to Sid, and Sid getting cheered wildly. The WWF fans rejected him, to then come back as this babyface hero and win it in the Garden to this huge ovation was like the ultimate vindication. And if he'd have stopped there, that was a great way to go out. Obviously he kept going, and I'm glad he did because he had another second amazing run. But
even in 2002, there was a good Big Show match. Big Show and Brock was really good.
Really good. It was because they kept it short, they kept it smart, and the Heyman turn was a real shocker.
It's one of those turns where I never saw it coming.
Nah, and it didn't make sense at the time. Only it actually did. At the time it's like, what are they doing? What is this?
Somebody. I mean, we're recording this obviously in 2020 when Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman are a team. But I saw somebody sort of tweeting today about, did you see the look that Heyman gave to the belt while Roman was holding it? And it's like, I've not seen it yet, but like, Heyman's a story guy, so like, I think if Heyman's going to do something, you can kind of relax, going, this is going to make sense.
Yeah, it'll be fine. And look, 2002 as well. Like, I think it's is it the SmackDown tag title match? Was it SmackDown tag belts at that point?
The Guerreros and Edge and Ray and Angle and Benoit, right?
I'm not sure if it's all of them.
It's a 3-team.
Is it a 3-team
Los
one?
Guerreros, Benoit,
they have a couple around that era, don't they? Where it's like,
yes, Los Guerreros against Benoit and Angle and Edge and Mysterio.
Yeah. So that's pretty good. That's the show with the Jeff Hardy Rico thing, right? Where Jeff Hardy misses his spot. Like, there's just all these little memorable things on there. And the Victoria match is pretty good as well.
The return of the Dudley Boys.
Yeah, because thank God, get rid of Deacon bloody Batista and Reverend Devon and everything. Like, come on, we didn't need that. No, it's just very good throughout, and it's kind of like, it looked like anyway WWE kind of getting back on track after 2002 was a bit bumpy and all over the place.
Yeah,
and, a lot of like throwing together ideas, NWO and whatever, and briefly, and then they just disappear. Hogan is champ, and then he's gone, and all that kind of stuff. But that kind of felt like, right, here we go. We're back, in the Garden. We've got Shawn on top again. Everything's good with the world, and it was just a strong show.
And 2006, to give it its due, was a fun show. There was good things on it. I actually thought I think most of us were very disappointed by the 2006 DX run, but them teaming with the Hardys and CM Punk and Triple H sort of putting Punk and the Hardys over before it against Team Rated RKO, and there was a very funny bit at the beginning of the match where Shawn Michaels super kicks Mike Knox and pins him, and then they're all going, who is that guy?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Mike Knox. Who's he? And I mean,
that did world of good for his career.
I mean, if it wasn't Mike Knox, maybe we would have been angry about it. But it was Mike Knox, who's now a realtor, so
Well, good for him. He's probably making decent money.
He's still selling.
I mean, the opening match is fun. You've got Dusty Flair, Ron Simmons, and Sergeant Slaughter wrestling.
Yeah, and all of it.
It's a good show.
It's a good show. I mean, the one thing I will say about 2006 is one of my probably top 10 least favourite things in wrestling ever is how they treated Lita on the way out on this show. I hated that. So,
but I mean, she's come back since. You can kind of brush it under.
If you watch it again, it's pretty bad.
I know, well, of course, but I mean, a lot of stuff they did with women in those days is pretty bad. To be fair,
especially when 2 months before,
just one of
Trish had the big send off. And I think Lita does, because we're, Sandra and I doing retro ITR, we're watching on Patreon, we're watching Raw and SmackDown, and Lita and Trish are so important to those shows. And
of course they are.
I think she deserved better. But
I agree.
Up next is 1992 taking on 2004. I mean, this is not really a big contest, is it?
Isn't it?
I mean, 2004 is the one year where I stopped watching WWE. because it just wasn't working for me. When you look at this card, I mean, I've watched it since, but like, you know, you've got Luther Reigns, The Undertaker versus Heidenreich, Spike Dudley is the Cruiserweight Champion, JBL and Booker T for the title. Oh,
yeah,
it's grim.
But
and then
people who weren't watching in '92 would probably say the same about Nails versus the Big Boss Man, Kamala versus. You know what I mean? It's easy to do
at the same time. I'm looking here because obviously I've got the matches here sitting looking. Does 2004 happen to have Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels?
Okay, so here's a controversial opinion, Kenny. Like most Bret and Shawn matches, it's not very good.
I mean, it's better than anything in 2004.
Fair. But it is, like, and don't get me wrong, before you all start internet, Bret Hart's my favourite wrestler ever. Shawn's a pretty close second in terms of people I like to watch, right? I don't think they ever gelled to the point of having this great match. I think WrestleMania 12 is tedious. I think Survivor Series 97 you can't even rate as a match.
It's a real shame because Survivor Series 97, I think you got a big sort of showcase of what they could do.
Yeah, it could have been great, but and you know what they did was good. But 92, like, Shawn wasn't quite that pristine super worker that he became in 94, 95. And a bit in 93, like, he was still kind of finding his feet as this heel singles guy, and you know his confidence is building as that. Bret hadn't been the champ for very long, so you know it's a new role for him. A lot of pressure on both of them to carry this sort of headline spot on a pay-per-view, and they did. Like, as a technical wrestling match, it's very good. It's just not very interesting.
I mean, are you going to say you want 2004 to go through?
No.
Okay. We don't need to go on then.
Okay.
But no, I mean, I'm not saying it's the best match ever, but Bret versus Shawn.
So I'm just trying to figure what's our justification for putting it through them that we both like 92.
I think 2004 is quite a dull show. I don't think there's really anything on it that resonates with people. I know a lot of people who kind of stopped watching around that time for a while. I mean, you've got the match where the baby faces win. They all get to be GM for a night.
Great.
Which, you know, it's,
Yeah.
whereas in 92 you've got you've got the campiness of like night stuck in a pole match with Bossman Nails.
I love Nails as well.
You've got a casket match
So,
with the Undertaker.
I do enjoy that.
Has anyone sold the fear of a casket more than Kamala? Maybe Yokozuna, but like that, they're the two.
Well, Yoko debuts in that show.
Mhm.
Like on pay-per-view.
And I mean, now we do have, sitting in front of your side of the table, we do have the Ultimate Maniacs, who never got to wrestle at Survivor Series 92. But I will say,
we'll talk about them in the next round.
but I actually thought they did a really good job with the perfect replacement
thing.
based on how
Yeah.
much time they had left. So 1992 goes through. So up next,
Two to go.
we've got two to go. We've got 2010 taking on 2013. 2010, we've got the main event of Wade Barrett and Randy Orton. Cena is the ref. If Cena doesn't call it down, if Cena doesn't call it down the middle, he's fired.
It was some
weird
that whole
stipulation.
Nexus Cena thing just all blurs into one.
When
ugly
Cena
mess,
became a member of the
doesn't it?
Nexus, but he couldn't win a Nexus T-shirt.
Yeah, God forbid.
Up against 2013, where
Yeah, so they're pretty close together. These obviously.
where
as well.
this is during the period where they try to transfer the Yes chant from Daniel Bryan to the Big Show, and they put the Big Show and Randy Orton as the main event of a Survivor Series.
2013's terrible. Like 2013 was them really.
The opener's good. Real Americans.
No, but
and the
2013
Shield.
as a year for
Yeah,
WWE. It's, I mean, because that's when they did SummerSlam and had Bryan win, and then did the turn.
They had Ryback
Triple
do a
H.
turn, which
It's
shouldn't
just
happen.
a lot of like. That was when they started really not listening to fans. Like,
SummerSlam was good.
yes, but remember what they did in the main event with Triple H and Randy, and
Yeah.
so that's when the fans started really turning on them. I don't think they'd really fully turned on them other than Cena, before that, and that was when they started turning on everything.
I forgot in 2010 we had Caval, Loki's WWE persona.
Complete waste of him. Incredibly talented guy, really good character as Loki as well, and takes himself very seriously, but like I don't think that's a bad thing. I think Loki's great, and I think WWE completely missed the boat.
Oh
with
yeah,
him.
they did.
And the Randy, I mean, it's lots of Randy Orton, isn't it? In at both of these shows, like in the main event, Randy Orton at a time when it was hard to care. Like Randy Orton in 2020, I think has been phenomenal. Randy Orton in 2013.
I think he was good in 2013.
He's always been good.
I don't think he was great in 2010 because it was babyface Randy Orton, and that's a bit meh.
Who wants to see Randy Orton as the Big Show? And even who wanted to see Randy Orton unless Wade Barrett was winning?
Yeah.
You know, and he should have won. Like,
I mean, he should have won a lot of matches.
So he should have. I mean, I think this is another one of those, kind of like the 2008 versus 2012 one. Again, two shows that are quite close together. There's not much between them, so it's just one of those, you know, which has the better matches. And I think 2010, the first 4 matches are actually all right, but then it kind of falls off a cliff.
It's difficult because I don't really have a big opinion either way. I mean,
I think 2010 creatively was better than 2013, slightly.
Sure.
But that's the best. And I think the first 4 matches are all quite good. You know, like DiBiase and Bryan and Morrison and Sheamus and Ziggler and Loki's actually all right, you know, for what it is. But, you know, they're okay.
2013 does have a really good opener with the Real Americans and the Shield against Cody, Goldust, the Usos and Rey Mysterio. That's really good.
It does. It's just
Punk and Bryan versus the Wyatts was okay.
On Big Show main event in 2013.
But yeah, that's the one.
You know, it's like I can't get past that.
So 2010 goes through. So our last match in the first round is 1993 taking on 2000. We've got the Americans against the foreign fanatics.
One of which is the Undertaker with his American flag coat.
Epic.
Brilliant.
Against 2000, where Steve Austin tried to get revenge for Triple H, orchestrating Rikishi to run him over, and the Undertaker wearing questionable trousers, which I'm hoping that you're seeing those on the screen right now, everybody. I really hope that we have those.
They better be, Ollie. 2000. So 2000 creatively is an incredible year for WWF, and it was a lot of that was down to a guy called Chris Kresge, who sadly passed away, you know, quite a while ago now, actually. But he was like the head of the writing team, and he would storyboard everything, and everything would make sense. You know, funny that. What happened to him was he got demoted at the end of the year and replaced by Steph McMahon. And I think it's fair to say that at that point, Steph got that job without any... It was nepotism, pure nepotism. She didn't really have any experience to be in that role as head writer. And, you know, she got a lot better as the years went on. But they replaced a guy who was so good with someone who really didn't know the job. And it immediately affected creative from, I mean, because think how good 2000 was creative. They got look at 2001.
They got through WrestleMania 17
just about. So everyone remembers
blocks.
This though. Like WrestleMania 17 is having this great build, and it doesn't really like. So you're going to talk about Rock Austin, but you remember when Deborah was supposed to be involved and managing the Rock and all that kind of. No, it wasn't great. Like it just wasn't. Remember when Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit didn't have a match? You know, now they were on the card and they just kind of added it on. And, you know, there wasn't like long-term build to a lot of that stuff, to some of it.
I can't work out whether this is all leading to you putting 2000 over or burying this show.
I'm burying it because this is the one where Steph was definitely in control at this point. And I think
she got in control in October of 2000.
Yeah, she did. And by this point, it was really... And it's not fair to blame her at all because it's not her, it's Vince and it's everyone. But... a lot of that sort of good work that Kresge had done had been starting to be undone, and there was that silly, like, was this when they did the Malenko and Lita silliness and all that kind of thing. And you know, you've got like Rock Rikishi, and it's like no one really wants to see that. No one wants Rikishi as a heel, and it kind of didn't make sense that it was Rikishi, you know, working with Rock. And then you've got Austin and Triple H, and that was the match where they didn't do a finish. Well, they did do a finish.
A 35-minute and 9-second no disqualification match with no finish.
Which ended in disqualification, I believe, essentially. Because what Austin did is Triple H got in a car, picked him up in a crate, turned upside down, dropped it on its roof, I believe.
Would we call that vehicular manslaughter?
Well, it's murder is what it is. And
attempted.
No, well, he should have been dead. You know, you don't survive that. But... not every man's Triple H, you know. And out he comes on Raw. I think it was a week later.
He had a wee bandage in his head.
He did. I mean, that is so... I mean, they made up for it No Way Out a couple of months later, but
even in that, I mean...
even then...
Triple H beats Austin the month before he wins the title, and then Triple H then decides he doesn't want to turn babyface to face Austin.
Yeah.
So they become a team. I mean,
like I said,
he is the
creative
game. He is the game.
You've got
to give him his due.
He certainly knows how to play it, but it was creatively not very satisfying. There's no particularly good wrestling on that show. Whereas 93, it's quite a fun little card. Like the opener is pretty good.
Great.
You know,
Randy Savage in there with Jannetty and the 1-2-3 Kid and Razor, and you've got like Adam Bomb and Diesel and Rick Martel still holding his own.
Yep. Shout out to Big Martel.
Big Rick. And then you get the Hearts versus the Knights,
which is terrible.
I like it, but in a kind of a weird, campy, like family story.
Hart in those shots.
I like the story of it.
The story's fine.
And I also love,
it wasn't even supposed to be
and
shot,
I also love the idea that
the Owen and Brett stuff's good.
I also like the idea that Terry Funk was supposed to be a knight and phoned in sick and said he couldn't be bothered.
So when they got, was Jeff Gaylord drafted in, or was that Barry Howard too?
I think it was Horowitz.
Yeah. But then you've got, you know, the Smoky Mountain tag is really good. No one cared.
You got four doinks with Men on a Mission, the Bushwhackers.
People hate that match, you know, but I quite like it. It entertains me.
So you're going to give me shit for liking the Hearts versus the Knights, but you're going to put over Bastion Booger, who was made to look as if he smelled like shite.
He did smell like shite. That was the stuff. It wasn't made to. That was his thing. That's why Rick Martel, shout out to Big Rick, when he had to wrestle him that time, he couldn't lock up with him. I think he got counted out. 93 as the main events builds up pretty well, like on TV. You know, with Pierre getting, or Jacques, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Pierre getting knocked out by Luger's forearm, and you know, Tatanka getting replaced by Taker. It was good, man. Like the build was good, and I just think it's quite a good show. And 2000 is a terrible show. Yeah,
no arguments from me. 1993 is clearly the winner, so it goes through.
That's it. We've done it.
So we have finished the first round. Whew! We've used our vetoes. Our friendship has prevailed. Just not happy with Deadly Game being put out so quickly. But moving on to the Sweet 16. We've got 1989 taking on 1994. We've got 1990 with the Ultimate Survivors taking on 2001 with the Alliance. 1995 in its wildcard battled the 2012 debut of The Shield. 2018 battles 1996. And then we've got 1988 taking on Montreal in 1997. 2014 with Sting's debut against 2016. 2002 taking on 1992. And we finish it off with 2010 taking on 1993. Thank you very much for joining me as always.
Do it again.
Bye everybody.